You know, it's the technology there,
that's
making the system work.
That's a perspective point. This is 3D future here, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to know how that idea relates to the future and not the now. Is that something that is going to continue in the future? Well, you're a maybe man, because what you were saying is that there are going to be DOPs who will become stereographers whether we like it or not. You will either work with directors who are happy to employ a stereographer, or will take a more general role.
If we're only talking about features, and I think there's a lot of other things going on, you know, live multi-camera, for example, is a prime example.
Ladies and gentlemen, hold that thought and think of any questions for later, because it's now Matt Bristow's turn. Matt Bristow is a senior executive at Prime Focus, who is one of the key 2D to 3D converters.
I've not quite reached the lofty heights of senior executive yet. Head of production.
Head of production, okay. He's a grown-up. We call those grown-ups. What's your sort of perspective on the future?
Well, I mean, you know, I think two things. I think Jules touched on it there as well. The fact that we're all here now in this environment on this scale, you know, for the last 2 days represents that the future is really strong. We wouldn't have been here a year ago, maybe on a smaller scale, and in terms of the work that everybody on the panel and in this room as well has seen, been a part of and created, the future's very bright. From my business, in terms of, I think conversions are slightly outmoded term now. We're a high-end visual effects outfit, so we prefer the term 2D to 3D creation. So we're the new creationists of 3D. But it's a high-end visual effects process. And in terms of the future on that side, and this is representative of the cinema industry as a whole, it's extremely buoyant. You know, from our point of view, we've just signed a 6-picture deal with Warner Brothers. We're working globally, and we are a global network as well, because I can assure you it takes an army of individuals to deliver a high-end, you know, 2D to 3D conversion. Well, you still use that. And as a visual effects...
In terms of the future, do you see, say, in the next 5 years, there are going to be 500 features? What percentage of that do you see, or would you like to see, 2D films converted into 3D, and what would you like to see shot native 3D?
You know what, I think, you know, for the near future, I think it's absolutely a hybrid approach, certainly on the bigger features anyway. I mean, you look in terms of kind of something like Avatar, for example, which probably, you know, exploded onto the scene, you know, kind of, you know, relatively in the last kind of 18, 12 months. It seems like a lifetime ago, but it's actually kind of very short. You've got a real mixture there of, you know, shot through stereo, stereo VFX, also kind of post-conversion as well, all living under this one roof to kind of deliver the director and the creative's vision of that world. For example, Narnia, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which we kind of delivered a kind of November last year. Again, you've got these kind of multi-layered visual effects elements within, even though it was all shot 2D, you know, stereographers were on board, you know, quite kind of early in the post-production to guide the kind of the director and the director of photography through the process and through the kind of the management of depth on a 90-minute, 2-hour scale. And I think that...
Why is 2D to 3D conversion just taken so much stick then, if it's a real genuine part of our present and future?
I must be speaking to different people, because
really?
You know, the clients who are coming through kind of our door and who we're dealing with on a kind of on a daily basis are really kind of excited by the kind of the quality of the output that we're able to achieve now, the quality of the output which is kind of, you know, will be developed. I mean, it's such an early stage as well. We're at version 1.0 in terms of our own kind of proprietary techniques for delivering 3D, but we kind of embrace the storytelling technique of what 3D is about. For example, as a visual effects facility, we're also in production, and we're in kind of first stage of shooting as well of the new Judge Dredd movie. We're working with the extremely, you know, talented and wonderful Anthony Dodd Mantle, whose kind of vision of this kind of world for Judge Dredd is unique in itself in a 2D world. Give him 3D rigs and 3D visual effects and, you know, post-conversion 2D to 3D. He's really going to take it to places which we haven't seen before.
I mean, I know there's a place within a feature for some 2D to 3D conversion, but something like Clash of the Titans, to be honest, was roundly derided. And if anybody's seen Clash of the Titans, had some horrendous 2D to 3D conversion in it. I'm assuming, therefore, that things have substantially moved on.
Well, I think if anybody who would, you know,
days.
We've had, you know, kind of, you know, I don't want to, you know, we kind of, you know, it's kind of like, you know, 7 months ago we were in similar situations, you know, talking to people, defending, criticising, well, being aware of what Clash of the Titans was. But what Clash of the Titans in itself gave us the kind of, and also gave the studios as well, a vision of what the future can be. It can be delivering a, you know, kind of a 3D movie within a certain time frame on a certain budget to achieve kind of, you know, let's face it, we are all in a business as well. These shows, we're all, you know, films need to be funded, they need to make money. Clash of the Titans made a huge amount of money, but that, again, that was, sorry, just to come back, that was version, you know, kind of 0.1 of the software. It has developed hugely since then. I think in terms of the feedback we got from Narnia, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, you know, it was very, very positive from a technical point of view within the technical press, really positive and supportive. In the kind of the general press, the 3D was kind of questioned as maybe not being strong enough. But that's because that's the creative decisions the filmmakers are laying down for that movie. We don't say, there's, you know, in terms of the rules and what are the rules, you know, for kind of 3D conversion, really, we can kind of, you know, we have control. We can do what you need to do there. If you want to play your film, you know, with minimum depth, or to be less aware of the depth, or if you want to push it and bring things out, you know, kind of negative or positive, we can achieve that for you. So we very much, as a post facility, take that direct, the creative control from that.
I appreciate the pitch. It's
have I defended?
Maybe, but what my takeaway for the future there is that actually the future of 2D to 3D conversion is to become part of a much more complicated and digital flow of filmmaking
or maybe
that
kind of
uses
shooting
native
3D,
uses conversion 3D, and uses CGI 3D.
A big part of it, a very big part of it.
What's a big part of it?
It will become a very big part. I mean, it's, you know, the landscape of film is immense. There's room for everything and everybody and every technique.
What will ultimately enhance or help the 2D to 3D conversion process is also if people actually adopt a 3D aesthetic when they shoot the 2D material in the first place.
Totally, 100% agree with that.
Okay, that I agree with. Hold all those thoughts for questions in a minute. Mark Samuelson, if we can possibly keep it, instead of a generic comments on 3D in general, we're on the sort of future of 3D storytelling. You know where you are now on your platform of 3D storytelling. You've been through one long, complicated experience. When you're sitting around the development table now at your film company, what sort of subjects are you looking at in the future, and what do you think your present experience in 3D has helped you with deciding how you're going to approach 3D in the future?
Yeah, thanks for saying that we know where we are now. I haven't got the faintest idea where we are now. I think that it's interesting. I think that this little discussion about where it's going is interesting. I take a very non-techie view. As you could see, my total inability to answer the one technical question I was asked reveals that I've sort of stayed. I'm not going to pretend that I know about that area. I think it might be that this is analogous to VFX, actually. I think that I know directors who really as recently as 5 years ago would have said, oh, well, okay, I really don't know about this whole VFX thing, but I guess I can kind of find out about it. And now I think almost all directors are very comfortable with it. Doesn't mean that the movie has to be a big VFX movie, but it might have some incredibly important VFX stuff in it. It might be created only because VFX is now affordable for certain things. So, you know, I was very struck by there's a film called Hereafter, which is Clint Eastwood's film, where it begins and it's you know 2012 or it's you know The Day After Tomorrow. It begins as a Roland Emmerich movie, and I just think it's interesting that somebody like him has just, I suppose Invictus probably had quite a lot of VFX in as well. So. He's obviously decided to become completely comfortable with that, both in execution but in conception of the stories that he's trying to tell. And I think we're going to end up with a version of that, where everybody gets more and more comfortable, the equipment continues to become more and more user-friendly and cheaper, the crews, more and more people get trained up, so there's more of a pool of people to choose from, and you don't have the problem which faces people who've been trying to make films this year of really a very, very shallow pool of experienced talent.
Do you think that cheaper equipment is going to make it easier to do better 3D storytelling? How does that all affect the future of 3D storytelling, though?
I think it probably makes it available to more films, and then it just comes down to better concepts. So that it's not, the issue then isn't, well, we couldn't even do that because it's so expensive. It becomes available to sort of most budgeted films eventually, in the way that VFX now, it's quite possible to do quite ambitious things, and it doesn't have to be a studio-sized budget. And I think that then the idea of what films to make broadens into an arena that includes the possibility of making them either in 3D or ultimately, what did you say, Matt? Created in 2D for 3D or something like that.
2D to 3D creation.
2D to 3D creation. So when we sit round the table thinking about what films to make...
And of your development slate, as you're doing that, say you've got 10 films in development, how many of those are 3D and how many are 2D?
None are 3D other than the one that we've made, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't want to make another 3D. Well, actually, no, there is a 3D idea that we're kicking around at the moment. They're all straightforward dramas, let's say, let's call them that broadly, and therefore there's no sort of compelling reason why they must be in 3D. But I think that these are all outside people's ideas. We're a financier as much as a producer or co-producer, so we're mostly receiving ideas from talent and other producers of films that they want to make. And the films that they want to make, at the moment, there's not very many of them are coming in that are 3D. They're still 95% 2D. There's a number of horror movies which are absolutely coming in as 3D proposals, and there is absolutely no reason why, particularly why they need to be 3D. It just somehow feels easy. So I'm not sure things are going to change that quickly. However, I would say 5 years from now, I would have thought there's a very good chance that a good proportion of those films would be 3D originated, because it's all got a lot easier, cheaper, more cost effective, more straightforward, and as much as anything else, people are comfortable with it. I suppose the other analogy is the change from editing on film to editing digitally, because I've been making films long enough that I can remember having conversations with an editor, or a proper grown-up mainstream editor I'd say 10 years ago, who was still saying, well, I just can't do this digital editing thing. I can't possibly edit unless I can feel the celluloid go through my hands, and that's the only way I can understand the rhythm of the film. This is a conversation that will be familiar to people. Many of us will have heard that before. And somehow there was a moment where it was the tipping point, wasn't it? And suddenly now, does anybody edit on film anymore? Maybe they do, but it's really, really, where did all the Steenbecks go?